على حب رسول الله الثالثة بأعلى أصواتكم. اللهم صل على محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Respected scholars, elders, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The king of Egypt was deeply impressed with Yusuf. He was impressed with his knowledge, his ability to interpret dreams. He admired the patience of Yusuf alayhi salam, his integrity. Even when he was defending himself, he did not go out of his way to throw others under the bus. He did not try to tarnish anyone else's reputation. So the king, after speaking to Yusuf, he decides not only that he should be released from prison. In ayah 54, as we discussed last night, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ, bring this Yusuf to me. I want to meet with him. I want to have a private meeting with him. أَسْتَخْلِصْهُ لِنَفْسِي, I wish to employ him exclusively. فَلَمَّا كَلَّمَهُ, when the king spoke to him, when they had a conversation, it was very clear to the king that this is someone who can greatly benefit my administration. قَالَ إِنَّكَ الْيَوْمَ لَدَيْنَا مَكِينٌ أَمِينٌ. You will be held in high esteem, and you are fully trusted by us. Now Yusuf alayhi salam, remember that this is a mushrik government. This is not an Islamic government. This is a polytheistic government. And Yusuf alayhi salam, he says, قَالَ اجْعَلْنِي عَلَى خَزَائِنِ الْأَرْضِ إِنِّي حَفِيظٌ عَلِيمٌ. He doesn't say, this is a mushrik government, and I am not going to work for an oppressive government. Now, the general rule of thumb is that we are not allowed to support oppressive governments. Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, they've made it clear that we are not permitted to aid oppressors, to strengthen systems that don't uphold divine values. So the question is, why does Yusuf volunteer to serve as the Minister of Agriculture and Food Distribution? The answer, we find it in some of the traditions of Ahlul Bayt. They give us a general principle. There were many Shias who would come to the Imams and they would ask, are we allowed to be employed by the Umayyads, by the Abbasids? Are we allowed to serve in any capacity? We have a narration from Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi, where he says, كَفَّارَةُ عَمَلِ السُّلْطَانِ قَضَاءُ حَوَائِجِ الْإِخْوَانِ. That when you work for such an administration, there is a kafara. There's a penance that you have to pay. Meaning that you cannot just work with the intention of advancing your career or earning money. No, no, no. You have to have a more noble objective. The Imam, he says, the kafara of working for the sultan is you have to be able to fulfill the needs of your brethren. You have to be able to help mazlumeen, especially your brothers and sisters in faith. Now Yusuf alayhi salam, he takes on this position because he knows that with his knowledge, he can ensure that people don't perish during the famine that is going to occur. So there is a maslaha, there is a noble objective that he's trying to achieve. And it's not just a matter of working for this polytheistic government. When Yusuf alayhi salam assumes this new role, you find that he issues an order. He's the Minister of Agriculture and Food Distribution. He issues a statement to all of the farmers in Egypt. So remember, the next 7 years will be years of prosperity. So he says to the farmers, produce as much crops as you can. And we, the government, we will purchase those food sources at market value. So he incentivized farmers to produce as much crop as possible. And he used the wealth of the nation. He purchased that food and he stored it. He stored it over that period of 7 years. And then the famine broke out. And the famine was so severe that it affected even the surrounding regions of Egypt. So it wasn't just Egypt. Even Philistine, Canaan, where Yaqub and his sons live, they were also affected by this famine. Now there's a famine, and people were amazed that this government, which is now under Yusuf alayhi salam, they planned for this crisis. How rare is it that you have a government that actually plans for a crisis? A government that is proactive. You know, see, these are the governments of awliyaullah. They are governments that are structured to actually serve the people. They anticipate challenges. They don't just react. They're not reactionary governments. So when the famine strikes, Yusuf alayhi salam, he has an efficient system, an efficient and equitable system. People, they line up, and he would give a camel load of food to each member of a family. You're a family of 5, you go to the food storages, and they give you 5 camel loads of food. So you're taken care of for 6 months, for a year. There's no pushing and shoving. You don't need to bribe anyone to get to the beginning of the line. Everyone is taken care of. They save enough food to feed everybody. Not only does Yusuf alayhi salam, is he able to feed all of his citizens, but even people from neighboring regions, they hear that we can go to Egypt and we can receive some food assistance. You see, in the government of Yusuf, he does not look at citizens of other nations as subhuman, that they're not our problem. He doesn't other foreigners. We have a narration where Yaqub alayhi salam, he has a conversation with his sons. This is mentioned in Bihar al-Anwar. So it's about the 8th year 1 year into the famine or so, Yaqub gathers his sons. Ya baniya innahu balaghni annahu yuba'u bimisr ta'amun tayyib. People are suffering in Canaan. Yaqub, he lives in the villages of Canaan. He says that news has reached me that there is good wheat and grain that is sold in Egypt. وَأَنَّ صَاحِبَهُ رَجُلٌ صَالِحٌ لا يحبس عن الناس. The one who is in charge, the ruler in Egypt, he is a righteous man. And he does not deprive his people. فَاذْهَبُوا إِلَيْهِ. So go to him. It's a journey of about 18 days. وَاشْتَرُوا مِنْ. So Yusuf alayhi salam, he set up a barter system where if you want, especially to those who are outside of Egypt, if you wanted food, you would trade whatever you have. So they take some of the goods that they have in Canaan and they go. They travel for 18 days until they reach Egypt. So they gather whatever merchandise that they can find so they can barter it for food. Now we come to the next ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in ayah 58, وَجَاءَ إِخْوَةُ يُوسُف. Now this is the moment that we've been waiting for. The reunion between Yusuf and his brothers. وَجَاءَ إِخْوَةُ يُوسُف فَدَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ فَعَرَفَهُمْ وَهُمْ لَهُ مُنْكِرُونَ. They're traveling. They're desperate. They arrive in Egypt after a long journey and they enter upon Yusuf. Yusuf alayhi salam is now sitting on his royal chair. The moment they enter, he recognizes them. Now you can imagine at that moment, Yusuf must have had mixed emotions. On the one hand, it's been decades since I've seen my family. But on the other hand, I am now looking face to face with those brothers who left me for dead. في غيابة الجب. Look at how circumstances have changed. The one who was thrown in the well is now sitting on a throne. And the brothers are coming to him for food. He recognized them, but they did not recognize him. Now this is something that's very strange. You would think that out of 10 brothers, at least one of them would have seen some resemblance. At least one of them would have caught on that, you look like someone. You look like our brother. The fact that they were unable to recognize Yusuf, the narrations of Ahlul Bayt, they say this is because Allah did not allow them to recognize him. It was a type of mu'jiza. There's a beautiful narration that we have in Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Ni'mah by Shaykh As-Saduq. Imam As-Sadiq, he makes a very beautiful connection here with Imam al-Mahdi. He says, إِنَّ فِي الْقَائِمِ سُنَّةٌ مِّن يُوسُف. There is a similarity. There is a parallel that we can draw between Yusuf and Imam al-Mahdi. عَجَّلَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى فَرَجًا. He says, إِنَّ إِخْوَةَ يُوسُف كَانُوا أَسْبَاطًا أَوْلَادَ أَنْبِيَاء. The brothers of Yusuf, they were the sons of a prophet. They were the grandsons of a prophet. تَاجَرُوا يُوسُف وَبَايَعُوهُ وَخَاطَبُوهُ. The brothers of Yusuf, they didn't just look at Yusuf. They were exchanging goods with him. They were interacting with him. They were talking to him. They were negotiating with him. وَهُوَ أَخُوهُم, and he's their brother. They saw him when he was a child. فَلَمْ يَعْرِفُوا, but yet they did not recognize him. حَتَّى قَالَ لَهُمْ يُوسُف أَنَا يُوسُف. When did they discover that he was their brother? When he told them, I'm Yusuf. فَمَا تُنْكِرُ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ, Imam al-Sadiq says. What is the matter with this ummah? The ummah of Rasulullah. أَن يَكُونَ اللَّهُ يَفْعَلُ بِحُجَّتِهِ مَا فَعَلَ بِيُوسُف. There are many Muslims, many non-Shias who say, what do you mean? Imam is in ghaiba. You see him, he mingles with the people, but no one recognizes him. Imam al-Sadiq says, the case of Imam al-Mahdi is similar to the case of Yusuf. People interact with him, they see him, they speak to him, but they do not recognize who he is. أَن يَكُونَ يَسِيرُ. Why is it surprising that Imam al-Mahdi walks among us? He is in our marketplaces. We see him. You might talk to him, but you don't know that it's him. It's exactly the same as the case of Yusuf alayhi salam. So they arrive, and Yusuf alayhi salam, he starts to chat with them. He makes small talk. Where are you guys from? You're a big family. Oh, we're from Canaan. Tell me about Canaan. They start speaking about their father. They list the number of members in their family. And Yusuf alayhi salam, as the camels are being loaded with the provisions, with the food, with the grains, he hosts them. He gives them a meal. He's very hospitable to them. Ayah 59, وَلَمَّا جَهَّزَهُمْ بِجِهَازِهِمْ قَالَ ائْتُونِي بِأَخٍ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَبِيكُمْ. It seems that through the conversation that Yusuf had with them, they tell Yusuf that we actually have 11 brothers. One of our brothers stayed behind. So we have one brother who's not with us. So Yusuf alayhi salam, he says, next time bring him so you can get 11 camel loads of grain and food provisions. And then he says, he tries to entice them, incentivize them to come back. He knows his brothers have a little bit of greed. He says, if you bring the 11th brother, you'll have 11 camel loads. أَلَا تَرَوْنِ أَنِّي أُوفِي الْكَيْلِ. Don't you see that I give everyone full measure? I don't shortchange anybody. I give everyone full measure. وَأَنَا خَيْرُ الْمُنزِلِينَ. And I am the most generous host. While you're waiting, have you ever been to a government agency when they're taking care of you, they're also feeding you? Have you ever tried to renew your driver license? They don't even give you a cup of water. Yusuf alayhi salam, as he is loading up these camels, these saddles, he feeds the people. He treats them with dignity. He doesn't treat them as though they're cattle. He honors them. He gives them food, drink. Many of them have traveled long distances. In ayah number 60, فَإِن لَمْ تَأْتُونِي بِهِ فَلَا كَيْلَ لَكُمْ عِنْدِي وَلَا تَقْرَبُونَ. He threatens them. You guys say you have 11 brothers? Prove it. Next time you come, I want to see this 11th brother. And if you don't bring him, you will not receive any food. And in fact, وَلَا تَقْرَبُونَ. You will not be given, if we want to use modern terms, you will not get a visa to enter Egypt, basically. You will not be allowed to enter Egypt. Ayah 61, قَالُوا سَنُرَاوِدُ عَنْهُ أَبَاهُ وَإِنَّا لَفَاعِلُونَ. That we will persuade our father to let him come, and we shall indeed do this. Right? They saw the generosity of this minister, and they're thinking to themselves that we can get a whole camel load if we bring Binyamin. وَقَالَ لِفِتْيَانِ, ayah 62. Yusuf alayhi salam now, of course, he's the minister. He has aides, he has servants. He says to his servants, وَقَالَ لِفِتْيَانِ اجْعَلُوا بِضَاعَتَهُمْ فِي رِحَالِهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَعْرِفُونَهَا إِذَا انْقَلَبُوا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. The brothers, they brought merchandise with them to barter so that they can get food. Yusuf, he tells his servants, put back their goods. Basically, the food that we're giving them, it's going to be for free. Give them back the goods that they brought to barter. Just stick it in their saddles so that they will come back. Because if they go back, they'll see that, oh, we still have something to barter, and they'll come back to Egypt. Because that is the system that Yusuf alayhi salam put in place, a barter system. And it's very likely that he also knew that it's going to be very difficult to convince Yaqub to allow Binyamin to come with the other brothers. So he needs to demonstrate a very high level of generosity, because the brothers are going to go back and say, this minister was so generous, but Yaqub doesn't trust his sons. He needs to see tangible evidence of generosity. Ayah 63, فَلَمَّا رَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَبِيهِمْ. They have 10 camel loads of food. They're coming back. 18 days of travel, they return to Canaan. قَالُوا يَا أَبَانَا مُنِعَ مِنَّا الْكَيْلِ. You know, subhanAllah, these brothers are something else. When they see their father, they don't say, Alhamdulillah, we got 10 camel loads. They're only focused on what they didn't get. They say, we were deprived of a camel load. SubhanAllah, you see the difference. Yusuf is always looking on the bright side. When he was in prison, he was speaking about Allah's grace upon him. The brothers come back. First thing they say to their father, that we were deprived of a camel load. If Binyamin were to come, we would have gotten 11 camel loads. فَأَرْسِلْ مَعَنَا أَخَانَا نَكْتِلْ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. So send with us our brother, so that we can get another measure of food. وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. We will surely protect him. That's exactly what they said about Yusuf alayhi salam. The exact wording. Ayah 64, قَالَ هَلْ آمُنُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا كَمَا أَمَنْتُكُمْ عَلَىٰ أَخِيهِ مِنْ قَبْلِ. Should I entrust Binyamin to you as I entrusted his brother before? Do you remember what happened to Yusuf? فَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ حَافِظًا وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Allah is the best protector, and He is the most merciful of the merciful. You know, look at Yaqub. After losing his son, he still has no doubt that Allah is the best of protectors. You would think that when you lose your son in such a tragic way, your iman would be shaken. You would have doubt in Allah as the protector. But yet, Yaqub has full confidence that even though Yusuf is not with me, even though I've gone through these difficulties, I still firmly believe, I have conviction that Allah is the best protector. That Allah protects Yusuf better than I could protect him. And He's the most merciful. Yaqub has seen nothing but trial, but Yusuf is similar to Zainab in the sense, مَا رَأَيْتُ إِلَّا جَمِيلًا. Allah is أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. You see the positivity. They always see the mercy of God in everything. Ayah 65. The brothers have yet to discover that Yusuf basically gave them back their goods. وَلَمَّا فَتَحُوا مَتَاعَهُمْ وَجَدُوا بِضَاعَتَهُمْ رُدَّتْ إِلَيْهِمْ. You can imagine how excited they were. They're unloading their camels, and lo and behold, they see that the goods they took to barter in Egypt, the goods were returned to them. So they come back with 10 loads of food, and they did not even have to barter their goods. قالوا يا أبانا ما نبغي. Oh Father, what more do we want? Look, هذه بضاعتنا ردت إلينا. Look at how generous the minister was. He returned to us our goods. وَنُمِيرُ أَهْلَنَا. We can provide for our families. وَنَحْفَظُ أَخَانَا. We will take care of our brother. وَنَزْدَادُ كَيْلَ بَعِيرٍ ذَلِكَ كَيْلٌ يَسِيرٌ. Let us take Binyamin the next time we go. We will get a camel load of food. Another camel load. That's a lot of food. And it's very easy for us. We were promised that if we bring Binyamin, we will get that camel load. The narrations say that 6 months later, the food was depleted. Yaqub alayhi salam, imagine having to feed 11 sons. It's a big family. That's a lot of mouths to feed. 6 months, mashallah, they depleted all of the food. So the next ayah, ayah 66, قالوا قال لن أرسله معكم حتى تؤتوني موثقا من الله. Yaqub, he finally relents. And he says, I will never send Binyamin with you until you take an oath before Allah. لَتُؤْتُنَّنِي بِهِ إِلَّا أَن يُحَاطَ بِكُمْ. That you will bring him back to me. Not like Yusuf. You will bring him back to me unless something happens. Unless you die. Unless a natural disaster takes place. But I am expecting you to take Binyamin and to bring him back safely. فَلَمَّا آتَوْهُ مَوْثِقَهُمْ قال الله على ما نقول وكيل. They took an oath. They all stood before Yaqub. They took an oath that we promise to bring back Binyamin. We will look after him and we will protect him. Ayah 67. وقال يا بني لا تدخلوا من باب واحد. It's very interesting advice. Yaqub knows that the brothers are going back to Egypt. He says, oh my dear sons, do not enter Egypt through one gate. وَادْخُلُوا مِنْ أَبْوَابٍ مُتَفَرِّقَةٍ. Enter through different gates. You're 11 brothers. Do not enter through one gate. Enter through different gates. 2 enter through one gate. Another 2 or 3 enter through another gate. The question is, why? Why does Yaqub say, do not enter through one gate? Yaqub alayhi salam is a very prudent person. He's very careful. He's very cautious. He knows his sons are entering a foreign country. When you enter a foreign country, and especially when you are in a vulnerable position and you need help from that country, do not do anything that will attract unwanted attention. If the authorities see 11 brothers, 11 able-bodied men, military-aged men entering through a gate, that crowd might raise suspicions. You might be perceived as a security threat. So do not attract unwanted attention. Be careful. Be smart. And this is very important advice for life in general. Don't attract unwanted attention. You're not being brave by engaging in unnecessary provocation. Be careful. Protect yourself. Don't be reckless. Some of us, especially when it comes to religious dialogue, sometimes we forget that we're a religious minority. We are in a position, we're in vulnerable positions. We are a minority within a minority. Do not attract unwanted attention to yourself. Do not expose yourself to unnecessary harm. And this is what Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they teach us in Zamanul Ghayba. At-taqiyyatu dini wa dinu abai. Do not underestimate the importance, the religious obligation of self-preservation. Don't expose yourself to unnecessary danger. So he says, enter through various gates. وَمَا أُغْنِي عَنْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Yaqub, he understands something very important. He says, nonetheless, we do our part to protect ourselves, but nonetheless, I cannot avail you of anything against God's will. Do not have confidence in your precautionary measures. Take precautionary measures, but don't forget that everything is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. In al-hukmu illa lillah. The decree is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. In al-hukmu illa lillah alayhi tawakkalt. I put my trust in Allah. I don't put my trust in my plan to protect you guys. I'm going to take all of the precautionary measures. We're going to be cautious, but ultimately we put our trust in Allah. Tawakkaltu alayhi وَعَلَيْهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. Inshallah, tomorrow night we'll speak about the brothers' return to Egypt with Binyamin. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.